السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميعا. أشكركم صراحة على الحضوركم اليوم معنا في الويبينار. أخوكم عبد الله الزهراني المدير التنفيذي لشركة ثروة. إن شاء الله اليوم حيكون الويبينار يعني تعليمي وفن. أنا عارف إنه we are late in the evening, so we'll make this fun inshallah. I would like to take this opportunity. The webinar is going to be in English, availing his time today to take us through one of the really amazing systems and approaches that are critical and essential in organizational development. And as HR professionals will get to appreciate the criticality in terms of job evaluation and job mapping and pay mapping. So I would like to ask Philipp, thankfully, to introduce himself and then kick off the show. And thank you very much, Philipp.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm not on Hawaii. I'm just in my basement in Germany. I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk to you guys. Abdullah and I, we have known each other for quite some time. And so this is now a great opportunity to approach some of his people in Saudi Arabia, as well as in the Gulf states. And as you can see, I'm no business consultant. I'm a tech guy. And I'm the founder and still the CEO of the company behind Gradar. And the way we see us is that we are a HR tech company. So whenever it comes to consulting, I'm not the person to talk to. It's something that Abdullah and all our implementation partners across the world can do much better than I can do. I'm going to post a link into the chat window, and I would very much appreciate it if you could open this and join the poll, because it's going to be a bit interactive what we are going to do here. So I'm now going to share my screen. It's really going to be a two-part thing. So there are going to be a couple of slides from PowerPoint, and there's going to be a live demo, which is going to be which is usually much more interesting than just looking at PowerPoint slides. So I'm not a big fan of death by PowerPoint. So we are going to give you an introduction into Gradar. Gradar is a tool, or started out as a tool for job evaluation back in the days, and has since evolved into a tool that very much supports the building of job architectures. So the first question, this is really about checking out whether everybody is ready. So it would be great if you could just give a quick answer to this. That's perfect, that's great. Okay, so it's working. Okay, so the technology is working.
I think we have.
I'm very happy, and it looks like everybody's ready. Okay, almost everybody. Okay, great. So I would like to give you a very short introduction into what is job evaluation. Because job evaluation, usually when we come into an organization, there's something like chaos. There are many different jobs. There are many different job titles. There's very different pay associated with the individual employees. And what we do is we bring order to chaos. And it's actually kind of in the nature of the Germans to ordering things. So it's kind of my second nature. And job evaluation, when we look at a job that has a comparable set of requirements, at the end of the day of the job evaluation exercise, every job will be associated with a grade. And the grade means that jobs will then be shown on the same level that have this comparable set of requirements. And that's the outcome of such an analysis and evaluation process. And there are different approaches to job evaluation. There are the analytical and the non-analytical processes. And I'm just going to quickly give you an overview of the different methods, because this is quite important in order to make some of the things a bit more clear that we might talk about later on. So when we talk about the simplest form of job evaluation, which is called the paired ranking approach, and that's definitely non-analytical. When you do paired ranking, you would compare one job to the other and then basically say, okay, this one has a higher value to us or a higher level of requirement than the other one. And at the end of the day, you will just have an internal job value hierarchy from the highest to the lowest job. And you might be then might want then to assign pay to those jobs, but it's very uncommon nowadays to do it like that, because it is kind of widely considered to be unreliable and very much biased. Because usually the one who shouts the loudest will get his jobs on the highest level, and it's not really, there's no method behind it. It's just about opinion. And whenever we come to countries where there are very strict equal pay laws, it would not stand up in court in a trial for equal pay. So the other still in use method of job evaluation nowadays is called job classification. And that's kind of a qualitative form of job content evaluation, where you would compare the jobs to a predefined class description. So this is something we all know from different compensation surveys, for example. So when you use a survey from Willis Towers Watson or Radford, for each job level there is a predefined description. And when you do the evaluation process, you would place the jobs in your organization in whichever classification description best suited for them. And really this approach is most common in compensation surveys and when I look at collective labor or shop agreements. Then the next big topic is then analytical job evaluation. And when you do an analytical job evaluation, you will use defined factors and different levels within those factors and assign points to each job based on the job's requirements. Because then you would compare the job's requirements against the definitions of the different levels. And the outcome of all the points and all the factors added together will be something that we call a total job score. So a very famous example for this will be the Hay guide charts, or from the International Labour Organization, the Scheme of Geneva from 1950. The Hay guide charts are actually from 1948. So that's kind of an old school thing to do. The very much related to this is the approach of job grading. You would still use the different factors and different factor levels, select those that are most appropriate, but in the background, it is where the adding up of the points happens. So the outcome will not be a total job score or a sum of points, but a translation into a grade structure. And that's the big difference between point factor-based job ranking and job grading. Great question from Abdullah regarding the main purpose of job evaluation and the question when to evaluate. We're going to get there and answer this. So this is a question to the audience. So what is the primary method of job evaluation that you use nowadays? This is always quite interesting to see where you stand today in order to address some more of the questions that might pop up. And the interesting thing is there's a huge difference in the use of the different systems. So American companies often use something like a job classification system, and they don't use point factor based systems that much anymore because they're much more market driven. So they often prefer to use 2, 3, or 4 different surveys instead of using one system to determine the internal equity of job levels. So that's quite interesting to see. So when we do this session tomorrow with an audience in the United States, it's going to be very much a different outcome. Great. Okay, so but here it's really there's a focus on job grading. So systems like Mercer's IPE or Willis Towers Watson global grading system, those are job grading tools, whereas the old style Haight guide chart system, that would be the point factor based system for job ranking. Great, but this is quite interesting to see. Perfect. Okay, so the next topic is going to be, and I'm just going to give you a very brief introduction into Gradar. So what we learned right now is that paired ranking is not a very transparent system and is not really in use anymore outside of some very, very specific circumstances maybe. And from what we can see in the market is that the point factor driven system, so the job ranking is kind of outdated. And the 2 major systems still in use is job classification, like in compensation surveys, and point factor based job grading, like we find in the more modern job evaluation systems. And what we have realized during the years that we've been doing, developing Gradar is that in the past, job evaluation was often a very complex and very expensive process that often required the kind of the secret knowledge of very expensive consultants to operate it. And we have kind of turned this classic consulting business into a product business. And we offer a software that is easy to use and understandable, and with the help of our implementation partners, will become yours in no time. So it's all about empowerment, and it's all about really laying a foundation for a much more advanced job architecture than just doing pricing through the classic job ranking approach. So when we talk about Gradar, it's a fairly new system. We established the brand in 2015 and have since won more than 300 clients across the globe. So this is, I personally think it's quite impressive because we were nobodies 5 years ago, and since have won some very large organizations using the system. And our users, the size from the organizations using Gradar ranges from 100 people to up to 350,000 employees. So we are quite happy with the outcome of this success story that we are wanting. So when we talk about Gradar, job evaluation happens in 3 career paths. You will have 25 grades as the outcome. There's an individual contributor career path. There's a people management career path. And you can see that those 2 career paths, they overlap from grade 19 down to grade 11. And in between those career paths, you will have the project management career path. And project management is becoming increasingly important in so many organizations that we, during the design of the tool, said, okay, we really need to have this in the system because it makes so much sense for an ever-growing number of organizations to be able to evaluate their jobs with factors that are appropriate for this. And now I'm going to jump live into the system in order to show you how it works. So this is the dashboard. And I hope everybody can still see it. When you are on the dashboard, you would find different materials like the grade map or some links to our Twitter account, as well as our release notes. And from here, you are able to access the major features of the tool. For example, the cross-comparison feature. So this is a feature, and everybody who's done job evaluation usually loves it, because you're able to, within seconds, build the cross-comparison that you need in this very moment. So there's no need, and back when I started doing job evaluation back in the days at Watson Wyatt, we spent weeks or at least days in many projects, building those those cross comparisons by hand. And it's now possible to do this with a what you see is what you get interface within seconds. So this is something we are still quite proud of, and we really like to use this a lot in our projects. So you can filter this to whatever setup you would like to have it. Or you could compare the different job families, and then you can see that, okay, there's general human resources, there's comp and ben, learning development and recruitment, then have everything next to each other. And then there's an export feature, so where you would be able to export this into Excel, and then you could print it nicely or change the colors or whatever needs to be done. There's one job that I always use for demonstration purposes. It's the specialist HRM. So when we look at the jobs in Gradar, there are different sections, and the first section contains the master data. So something like a job title, a company-specific job code, some comments, or kind of a short job description, and an alignment with custom organizational units, or a global job family, which is quite important for some of the other features in the system, or a custom job family, or a custom variable such as grading status, job category, management level, or whatever it is that you need. And then we have the grading results. So the grading results in this case is an individual contributor in grade 10, or translated into a custom career level called level 5. And the way how you get there is by going through the grading exercise. So the grading happens in those 3 career paths, and you would select based on the definition of terms which one to choose. In this case, we have chosen the individual contributor career path. And when we click on next, you will see that there is, for example, the professional knowledge or the experience needed, and problem solving and people responsibility and some other factors. So to see what is professional knowledge all about, you will see that there is a factor description that defines what is professional knowledge all about. And I'm just having a look. Is there a... Okay. And in order to define or analyze the requirements, you would take a look at those one-liners. And the one-liners, they give you very brief information about what is this level of requirement. And here we are talking about an undergraduate degree, for example, or, and in order to make this compatible with European countries, an apprenticeship and additional certified qualifications. Or when we talk about level 7, then we would talk about the university degree, like a master's degree. Level 8 is more PhD, and level 9 is really the requirement to have something like a postdoc qualification. But in addition to this one-liner, there is a much more detailed definition of terms available, which is online. All of this is available in a multitude of languages. The most recent language that we added is Serbian. And there are 3 more to come this month alone, so that this list is becoming more and more international, just like our clients are. You could add something like a comment to this factor or flag this factor in order to, mark it and see later on in the detailed grading results overview that this is something that you might want to revise. It does support Arabic. I'm going to click on it. And I hope Google Translate isn't going to break it. So this is the Arabic version. So this is something that we built very early on in our development of the product, because we wanted to make it a truly international tool. And we have a number of Arabic users. Some are quite exotic, I must say. So, for example, there's a Bahrain airport company using the system, which is one of our earliest users, I think, if I remember correctly. So this is quite exciting to have these users from all over the world. So this is something that always makes me very happy. And then based on the professional knowledge chosen, the other factors will receive some kind of highlighting, basically bold print, showing these are kind of the most likely or most commonly used factor levels in combination with this level of professional knowledge. So when we switch to professional knowledge level 1, and that's basically unskilled labor, then it's very uncommon to have anyone with more than 15 years of experience who is unskilled. But when we talk about level 6, a bachelor's degree, then it's quite common to have anything between up to 1 year and 3 to 5 years. So to answer one of the questions, our end users are usually companies or different organizations. And we have implementation partners all over the world. And for our implementation partners, because they sometimes have to work with very small organizations, there's usually a special option to take care of them. Because those very small organizations, they don't have to pay an annual fee, but this is something where our implementation partners are able to use a one-time fee and still use the modern system in order to do the job evaluation process without the small company having access to the system themselves. And then the difference between Talent Hub by Korn Ferry, well, I mean, it's job evaluation, it's competencies, it's market data, so it's kind of comparable. Our system is much more user-friendly, much cheaper, and our support is much better, and we are much funnier than the people at Korn Ferry, and definitely less expensive. So going through all of these factors, so like problem solving or people responsibility, which is quite interesting to have this in the individual contributor career path, because here you can cover things like okay, there's no responsibility for other people, or there's something like instruction or training of others, even up to being kind of the guru in a certain field, and therefore showing a lot of responsibility in terms of educating others to cover any kind of job here in the system. Then we have a factor called organizational knowledge. This is about knowing your place in the organization, knowing how your own department works, how other units work, or even knowing about the entire market and the strategy of the organization, and maybe even influencing and defining the situation. One factor that is quite unique to our system, which reflects the reality in many organizations, especially in manufacturing organizations or knowledge organizations, is to deal with processes. Because you have people who are running or doing a process, you have others who are monitoring a process, and yet again, you have others who contribute to the development of a new process, or you have the ones who are in charge of developing a new process and actually do this, be it with a department-wide significance or a divisional significance or even a company-wide significance. So this is something that can be reflected here, which later on can be used in order to support your organizational development processes. So this is a factor that is not exactly challenging to use, but it brings a lot of transparency into your organization of who is actually in charge of a process. Or is it 5 people, and too many cooks? Not exactly doing a good job with the process or in the kitchen. And we have something like functional responsibility. Yet again, here as a part of the individual contributor career path, which is basically goes from no scope of action up to leading an entire discipline or leading a discipline with business strategic relevance, or actually directly impacting the entire corporate strategy and business results. This one is scaled through the scope of decisions. Does it happen on the national level, or does it happen on a global level? So we all know, let's say, a manager learning development. Some of them are in charge of a national strategy or national guidelines, and others are in charge of international guidelines, which usually comes with much greater complexity. And it's a higher level of requirement when you do it like that. And then finally, one of the classic factors, communication, from polite everyday communication up to representing the organization on a very high level. So when we click on calculate, it gives us our grade. And then you can see 2 other boxes. And this box is called job matching, and the other box is called competencies. And what Gradar does is we use the information from our career path, so one of those 3, together with the job grade and our global job family. And right now we have something like 245 different job families, including the subfamilies, and show benchmark job matches from different survey vendors that are appropriate. So this is something, and this is a huge difference to all the other systems, because we are kind of on a meta level. Because we don't do market data ourselves, because that market is saturated, because you have all those major vendors. You've got your Korn Ferry, you've got your Mercer, you've got your Willis Towers Watson, you've got your Radford, you've got your Culpeper, and then you've got all those local vendors, like Germany's Lose, like Poland's Sedlak and Sedlak, and many, many others that operate locally. So going into that direction and competing with the new vendors like salary.com or PayFactors or PayScale, that didn't make any sense for us. And that's why we focused on doing one thing right, and that's analytical job evaluation. But we know about the need to translate this into the job matches from other vendors. So when you are on the company profile, and this is a demo company, we can select some of the vendors. And then what happens here on the job profile, and I just jump back to the specialist HRM profile, it will give you, for these vendors, the different job codes, like the global technology survey from Radford, or you could choose something from Willis Towers Watson or Culpeper 2019 or 20. Or if we activate something like Hey, and I'm going to do that and refresh it here, it gives you the job code from the Hey survey, which you could then use. And if you have uploaded the data and you've bought the data from Korn Ferry at the ridiculous prices that they charge, you could use this and then show the data here in the tool. And this is a demo data from Culpeper here in Germany, as well as another German vendor called Lose. And you can see that the data is in here. You've got the number of companies, the number of incumbents. You've got the job code. And you can see that's the base pay, and this is the target total compensation. Or what you could do is have a look at the market data comparison, and then compare the Culpeper rates against the local rates, as well as an internal benchmark that we uploaded into the system. And it is then available for export into Word. Now I need to see where this is happening. It's probably happening on another screen. Oh, there it is. So it comes out as a Microsoft Word file, which you could then use and show it to the managers who are recruiting for this job, or you could show it to a manager during a compensation review session, or in any other circumstance where you might need this information. So this is what happens with the market data. And then the other great option is to use this information. So again, the combination of the job family and the job grade and the career path in order to show competencies here in the system. And this is quite exciting. So this is something we very much like. So we know that a grade 10 from the individual contributor career path translates into the competency level tactical. And these competencies, they come from our partner TMA. That's a Dutch company that has been around for more than 20 years. And they have this wonderful competency model online. And the behavioral examples of their model, they're scaled into 4 categories. So you've got the general level, you've got the operational level, the tactical, and the strategical level. And we know that our grade 10 from the individual contributors aligns nicely with the tactical level of the competencies. So this is the leveling. So we have the career path and the grade assigning the tactical level. And then we have the content. And in this case, there are 3 default competencies like workmanship and learning ability and problem analysis, because they very much align with conscientiousness and intelligence. So 2 of the very much driving factors of on-the-job performance of employees. And based on the global job family chosen, in that case, it's human resources. It gives us 4 additional competencies. In this case, attention to detail and the written expression, persuasiveness, as well as social awareness, always together with the behavioral examples. So this is something that works out of the box. Customized, it is possible to do that as well, either by editing the competencies based on the job level, or by building your own translation model. So saying that you could use your in-house job families and then build a translation of the competency model between your in-house families and the 5, 6, 7, or 10 default competencies based on level as well as job family. So the difference to Talent Hub and other systems is this works out of the box. And in 90% of the cases, this is fine. If more customization is needed, this is something that happens with our partners, because they would usually do workshops and then design a custom competency model or a custom translation, which we can then easily implement into the system. So that's the other big thing. And then thirdly, what often the outcome is of a job evaluation exercise, something like pay bands. And these are just demo pay bands. So in this case, we said, okay, there's base pay, and that's the classic, the minimum and the maximum. And instead of using, 2 halves, we are using 3/3. So we have got a segment 1 top and a segment 2 top, and a midpoint that is actually not shown here, but is usually quite relevant to compare pay bands or to do something like a comparison analysis. So this one is based on base pay. And in addition to base pay, you can see that, for example, in the midpoint, we would add an absolute markup of 3,500 euros. So instead of 36,000, it's 39,500. And the same is true for minimum, and the same is true for maximum. You might have very different pay bands in other countries. Yeah? So this is a classic pay band approach of dividing a payment in two halves, but using a split approach or a mixed pay approach, where you say, okay, my target total compensation is 100%, my base pay thereof is 90%, and then 10% goes into the variable pay. Within the system, there are many different options available to set up the compensation structure in the tool and to customize the tool as well. And what I'm really interested in to learn from you is, so when you determine salary, and please go to the polls again, what is your primary method of determining salaries for single employees? So do you use something like market comparison, so using the surveys out there? Is your primary method the use of a pay band? Or do you do the peer comparison? You know, Abdullah is earning that much, so the other one has to earn that much as well. Or don't you do that at all? And again, here, this is something where we would see very different results between countries or regions, because many Americans would use exclusively market comparison, whereas in European countries, you will often have the use of internal compensation structures as the main method of determining pay. So our American clients, they love the system because they use the point factor based job grading in order to understand their jobs, and then they use the job matching feature in order to assign the job matches that are relevant for them. So instead of managing job matches within Excel files, they now have it online in the tool. So this is one of the major advantages for them, because then they really get an understanding of what are the jobs like and can then do a much better job matching and benchmarking exercise than before. Also, I'm quite interested in learning, well, with which HR tools and processes have you linked your job evaluation results? As you can see, out of the box, from the Gradar perspective, it works with market data. It works with compensation structures or pay bands. We've got the competencies in the systems, but we know of organizations who link job evaluation with their job descriptions, with their job titles, and often career paths, sometimes benefits, such as granting a company car allowance or certain health benefits. Okay, what happened? Okay, so when we did this exercise in Germany a couple of months ago, we had a similar result. So we had, back then we had 15% saying, okay, they're using it to align market data. We had 20% saying there's an alignment of pay bands, 9% for competencies, Job descriptions with 21%, so this is kind of comparable. Job titles a bit more with 11%. We had a few saying, okay, they use it for career pathing, and then benefits with 11%. So the tendency is comparable, and I'm really looking forward to getting similar results from the United States in order to see whether they paint a very much different picture. Okay, this is great. Perfect. It's a timer. Okay.
Philip, can we pause a little bit and just take some questions and try to answer them?
Absolutely.
What do you think? So yeah. we have a number of questions. I'm mindful that the team have asked, Abdullah al-Mullah have asked the question, what would be the main purpose of job evaluation? And when should we reevaluate the job? And how frequent? You want to take this, or shall I take this, Philip?
You're welcome to do this. I wanted to have this result here, because this is kind of a little answer to the question.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So this question is really asking the audience tonight what for them the tools and processes are that they link to job evaluation. You can see that there's a clear majority to link it to market data as well as pay structures. And I think what Abdullah can do is now speak from his practice and precedence experience, from what he sees as a consultant and how this works. So the typical outcome that we see from a job evaluation exercise that usually everybody does is to set up pay bands. They often use benchmark data or market data to do this. Sometimes they don't. It is much less common to use the competencies. So this is on the rise. And job descriptions very much depend on the country where the job evaluation is established. So there are some countries that would publish the job evaluation results as part of their job advertisements. And there are other countries that don't do this at all.
Absolutely, Philip. Thank you very much. So as Philip mentioned, it's really an exercise that is necessary, especially when organizations that we work with here in the Saudi market who require an HR transformation, or I would say an organizational transformation to take place as a result of a strategic shift or the introduction of new jobs or new job families. So an exercise, a job evaluation exercise usually is needed. What we are seeing in the market is a rise in the request for job evaluation services. And this is the result of many companies restructuring themselves as a result of either strategic shift or the COVID situation that took place. So you would expect to have a major job evaluation exercise in the I would say in the onset of the organization, when you develop a new organization, or when you have a major shift in the organization, or basically when you see an introduction of a new line of business. Let's say, for example, one client we worked with, they just introduced marketing as a function in their business, and they are a government entity. They never used marketing before. They were used to having people come in through the door without using a marketing approach. So now they have introduced a whole basically job family, a marketing job family. This required them, of course, to do job evaluation and ensure that they are actually they place the job in the right structure. How often is this done? If an organization is kind of mature, usually organizations go through a job evaluation exercise every 2 years if their business is stable. I think during the 2019 taught us that there is nothing called stable. Everything is shifting and changing, and many organizations are realigning themselves to stay ahead of the game in today's world. So yes, you would expect to see more and more job evaluation exercise to ensure that you are aligned with the market in terms of relevant or say a relative weight of jobs, and in the same time ensure that you are aligned with the market when it comes to the Saudi market, or I would say the compensation side of the market. Let me look at the other question. I think we had a question from Mohammed Sharara. Does it support Arabic? Yes, I think that was answered. So the end customers, I think you might want to answer this, Philip. So the question is the end customer consulting firms or regular companies?
Yeah, I briefly talked about this. So the majority of our license contracts is with the end user, so the companies or the different organizations. And in addition, we have partners across the globe who use Gradar in their projects. So in my experience, they really love working with Gradar because it gives them the opportunity to have a very modern tool at very low cost, so that they can use it with their clients. And but that's often the case with, it's often the case with very small organizations who rely to 100% on the consultant to do the job, and others, they let themselves get empowered and then later on use the system themselves. And that's actually one of the last questions. Does it make sense to have job evaluation in a company with less than 100 employees? Maybe. Because sometimes it does make sense, especially if the organization is quite complex. If it's a very homogeneous group of employees, and so for example, there's one team leader or there are 3 team leaders and 80 mechanics, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to have something like a job evaluation. But as soon as there is a heterogeneous organization, you can use job evaluation to build your compensation structure, to maybe do market comparison. Though the problem is that the level of pay usually very much aligns with the size of the organization, and then using one of the big American brands to do a market comparison, if you are a very small organization, usually doesn't make a lot of sense, because you have many very large organizations reporting their data into those surveys, which is not really representative for a smaller organization. But that's another topic. But using the results to do performance management, to introduce a competency model, works nicely in smaller organizations too.
Yes, thank you, Philip. And I think the size of the organization really does play a role in your decision to evaluate your jobs. However, I always tell my clients, you want to design an organization for the future, not for the current situation or current state. So you may have even 20 employees, but you would anyways evaluate the jobs and place them in the right space and the right levels and benchmark with the market. Because when this 20 employees become 100 or become 200, your organizational infrastructure is there to support such expansion. So yes, I think it's certainly something that's worth an investment, because this is where you ensure that we have an infrastructure in the organization. We have worked with many clients, and they are, I would say, long into the business, and they have been doing a lot of great things. When the COVID-19 situation happened, they really scrambled around because they didn't know who to let go, what's going to happen. They didn't have job families. It was just, sales and operations, and that's it. So I think the once you understand where your organization, the job classifications, the levels, etc., then you will be able to make those critical decisions with ease, I would say, relative ease. There's a question saying, what is the difference between this system and Talent Hub by Korn Ferry? I think Philip have exhausted the going through the system. One of the greatest benefits, that as somebody who've used actually Hay Group, Mercer, and also Gradar, one of the benefits that this system gives us is that it gives us flexibility. This is something, the ease of use, the flexibility. There's not around a red tape around the system, which is something that is happening a lot with the major consulting firms. I mean, they do this because it's part of their business model. to protect their proprietary, or let's say their methodologies. But what I like about Gradar, it's easy to use. There is no red tape. It's complete empowerment in the hands of the user. And I think that's what really makes the difference when we work with our clients, that I would prefer to use Gradar over other systems. Now, one other thing that's also an advantage is that this system gives me flexibility even to use compensation data from different companies, not necessarily, I don't want to be hostage to one company that I have to use their system and use their comp data. So that kind of flexibility gives me a lot of ease, because sometimes when I work with consulting firms, the data is not available with a single consulting firm. So for example, in the market, I'll give you an example. In the Saudi market, the healthcare data is usually with Tharwah. From our experience, Tharwah here in Saudi Arabia, they have a lot of good, I would say, healthcare data. So if you're in the healthcare sector, you're kind of, you have to go to Tharwah. But if you want to go with other company support services or others, you can go to Mercer maybe and Korn Ferry. So sometimes you have to shop around for data. And if you have that data from different sources, combining them is going to be a nightmare if you're using only one single company's system. So Gradar gives us that flexibility, which I think is an added value and an added advantage. Gentlemen, any other questions? I think I have another answer coming in. Is Gradar data linked and updated with the Saudi market? Philipp.
So my experience, the system works in any market. There's no management bias, there's no gender bias, there's no cultural bias to evaluating jobs in the system. And this was something that we very much stressed during the design of the tool. And I mean, we had the big opportunity to build something new with the knowledge about the flaws and deficiencies of all the other tools out there. I grew up with the global grading system by Watson Wyatt back in the days. And it's a system that I quite liked, and it's one of the more modern systems. So it's an all right system, really. But there's still some big flaws in the system. And we said, okay, we don't want to have, for example, something like the decision of which career band to choose. Is it 3M? Is it 4M? Is it 2? Is it 3IC, 4IC, and all of these things? And so we didn't want any of that. And at the same time, we did not want to have anything like, the old school system in here, where you are hunting for points, ideally based on pen and paper. So it's a bit like Dungeons and Dragons when you evaluate jobs with hay sometimes. And so we said, okay, it needs to be web-based. It needs to be available in a multitude of languages. And if there's a need to customize this further, to add more examples to a text, this is something that we learned from our partners, and they give us the information, and we would just add it to the description or to the definition of terms. This is, I think, this is the fun in the entire business development that we do here. It's about growing in different markets. It's about winning users and clients all over the world and making them happy. And so far, I would say we've been quite successful doing this. So what you can do, whenever you are up to it or you have the time, just go on our website. So there's, right now it's I think the English version I'm going to show you, and you can click on Get Started for free, and then you can sign up for a free trial and in order to give it a shot. Yeah, so this is something that you can do then. And it's actually free. The only thing that might happen is that Abdullah is going to follow up when he sees that someone from the audience has signed up. But apart from that, you can really use the system or even continue using the basic edition, which might be especially attractive for smaller organizations in the market. And everything else I mean, pricing starts at, well, that's US dollars at $1,500 a year and goes up to $6,000 a year. So it's
excellent, excellent, Philip. Thank you very much. So as you can see, gentlemen, the system is quite easy to use. It is really a system that we really like using as a consulting firm working here in the Saudi market. I really wanted to take this opportunity to thank Philip for his time and for taking us through this great learning. I wanted to also open the floor if there are any more questions, and I think we can allow the team to open their mics if possible, if needed. So as soon as I find out how. So I will allow, okay, there you go. So I allowed you now, guys, to ask any questions. So if you want to open your mic to ask a question, go ahead. It's now open. So I hope I did it the right way. Allow people to, yes, I did that. And so any questions, anyone, any questions about the system, about job evaluation in general? I'm more than happy to take them now. If not, I would like to thank you all for...
there's one from Mohammed.
Oh, okay.
He asked, how is that linked to the organization structure and job titles?
Okay,
so
sure.
There's a link. So for example, there's something that we call organization units. And this is something that can be the organization structure. It doesn't have to be, it could be something else. So it's fully customizable. However you want it to be, it will be. And you can easily import your structure. And once you've imported your structure, like your job families, like your organization structures or other variables, you can easily upload the jobs as well. So there's an import feature for the jobs from your organization too. And we even support something like the migration of legacy data, be it from Korn Ferry or Willis Towers Watson or other systems. Where if you have existing evaluation results, we can kind of convert them into Gradar evaluations, upload them, and get the Gradar grades right away. So then the work is not evaluating each and every job here in the system, but then the work is about building a transfer matrix and aligning existing evaluation results with the new structure. So this is something that we do quite often.
Excellent. Philip, I have a question from the audience reached on my WhatsApp. Somebody asked a question, do you offer training, job evaluation training using Gradar?
Yes. I mean, if there's the need to do something, I mean, it's fairly easy to use as is. So our partners, they support this. So someone from Abdullah's team could do this, but we are available for any kind of support that you would need, be it a 1 hour session here, a 2 hour session there. Especially if it becomes very technical, that's usually our job to do because we are the job evaluation and Gradar nerds. So that's what we usually help with.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. I think there's a question from Mohammed Sharara. Can this system help us in finding similar titles that can be merged?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's actually a great outcome of especially large-scale projects, and because title spelling is often different, or sometimes the title means the same. For example, financial analyst and controller. So what we suggest doing is, once you've evaluated all the jobs in the organization, to go through them in order to come up with something like anchor positions, in order to reduce the number of unique jobs that you have in the system. And doing this often happens through using filters like the global job family or your own job family filter. And then once you do that, and I'm going to use software engineering as an example. Okay, I don't have any data in here. Let's say people management. Yeah, and then you could have a look at this and, for example, use the cross comparison. And then you could see, okay, I have my expert employer branding on the same level like my corporate recruiter. Oh no, there's an HR business partner and a senior human resources officer. So maybe we can align those two. And then you could switch to, for example, the grading results, filter grade 12. And then you would see the different jobs together with the evaluation results. So this is definitely a way to do this. I mean, it's manual, but since job titles are very diverse across the globe, this is probably the best way to do this.
Excellent. Thank you, Philipp. Much appreciated. Excellent. Thank you very much. I think we really tight with the time. If there are any more questions, we can entertain. Otherwise, we will conclude this great session that we've had. And I would really want to thank Philipp for taking the time and sharing this with us. We are more than happy to support you guys here in Saudi Arabia. We are really proud to be working with Gradar and Philipp in this using this amazing tool. And I'm sure we can certainly work together to support you and your needs in the coming future. Thank you very much, Philipp, for your time. And thank you everyone for your time attending this webinar. And hopefully we will see you soon in an actual job evaluation project.